Good evening. This is a question I have for Alex Jones. As I am part of the anonymous group, I would like to know why, after many years of telling a lot of truth, Alex Jones has now reverted to saying, there is no global warming. How can this so-called truther, the man who single-handedly started the 9/11 truth movement, go from being a pretty hardcore truth teller to a power structure controlled, toeing the line, denying climate change or global warming, whatever you want to say, a-hole operative? In his most recent weeks and months, Alex has said that there is more ice in Antarctica, polar bears can swim for 400 miles, and there is no anthropogenic global warming. Now, how can Mr. Jones claim this when if you look at a documentary called Chasing Ice, for example, it's not political, there's no money to be made out of it, it just shows you frontline evidence of the ice caps melting completely in Antarctica. That was shot 3 years ago. The guy has gone from being a complete, in my book, a complete hero to a blob zero. Now, if anyone doubts what I'm saying, ask yourself this. Why does Alex never talk about the Jesuits or the Society of Jesus? And why does he always make out when people try to bring this subject up that they're crazy, insane, or just simply whack jobs? And why does he always go on about Donald Trump, who is, quite frankly, just another puppet in the play? No worse than Obama, but no better. Maybe better than Hillary Clinton, but that's not hard, is it? Hey, Hillary. Hellcat Hillary. Now, anyway, back to the video about AJ. Here's an individual who seems, on the face of it, to tell the truth about a lot of stuff, and you know what he does. But how he can say there's global cooling is beyond me. I mean, why would there be a 1 trillion ton iceberg just fell off Larsen Shelf Sea, Antarctica, the size of Delaware? Look that up. If there was global cooling, why are there massive methane deposits thawing everywhere? Is that because of global cooling? I think not. Nighttime temperatures are steadily increasing globally. This is the 375th month in a row of global heat index topping out. I mean, just look it up, people. This is not an attack on Alex Jones as a man. He's a good man, I think. But he's just become recently a complete shill. And why he keeps talking about Donald Trump being the saviour of mankind, I do not know. Anyway, there's a lot. I could say a lot more, but I'm not going to, because I know not many people will take this seriously. But hardline facts are hardline facts. The massive geoengineering programs are destroying the entire web of life. Our days are numbered, and Alex Jones and all these other muppets in the so-called truth movement, free press, alternative media, whatever, none of them will tell you anything about the Jesuits, the geoengineering, and the fact that Donald Trump is controlled by Rothschilds. And the Rothschilds, I hate to break everyone's bubbles, especially David Icke and his lizard propaganda. I mean, what a character that man is. I mean, here's a guy that says, the Queen of England is a lizard. Now, you know what? She's an old hag. She had Diana murdered, and she should have been jailed and shot for that. But to say she's a lizard is preposterous. And I think the only reason why David Icke hasn't had his head lizarded is because he does put out a lot of credible data, but then he washes it with this lizard nonsense. And even if there are lizards, how could it ever be proven? And he always says, oh, the Rothschilds are in control of the web. And I'm sure he knows that Rothschilds used to be called Rothschild or Bauer. Their real name was Bauer. They came from a slum somewhere in the 1600s, obviously, and they were given their first job by a Venetian powerhouse, the Venetian nobility, which all these maggots in the true free press, so-called, know about, but never talk about. Oh, what a surprise, eh? Now, mark my words, people. The biosphere is collapsing. The cryospheres are collapsing. The atmosphere is poisoned. The precipitation and the hydrological system are derailed and poisoned. The waters are poisoned. Vaccines are poisoned. Our children are being poisoned. Our entire way of life has been poisoned. And the main people behind it are the Jesuits. And whoever the Jesuits answer to must be very evil, because the Society of Jesus, which was founded by Ignatius Loyola, was extremely evil. I watched a film a few weeks ago called Silence, and it was a complete shambles because they tried to show the Jesuits as being martyrs in Japan. They never mentioned how they went to that country and tried to corrupt their entire religion and turn the government on its head, and they were exiled, as they have been from over 80 countries throughout history. And yeah, guess what? You never hear anyone except Eric John Phelps, Loren Murray, and a few other brave souls talk about it in depth. Alex Jones never mentions it. That maggot, David Icke, whenever he says about the Jesuits, he just says they're a secret society and the Rothschilds control everything. Joke. Anonymous watches, Anonymous knows. Back to the hardcore facts. So many people around the world still believe 9/11 was done by Osama bin Laden. What a joke. Bin Laden used to work for the CIA in the late 70s, early 80s. He was recruited by Zbigniew Brzezinski, who's just died. He was the National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter. Look that up. They used bin Laden as a way to fight the Russians in Afghanistan, who the Russians were drawn into Afghanistan by Zbigniew Brzezinski and the American government. Look it up. And the way they portray 9/11, to me, is a joke. They never even mention Building 7, which was a 47-story building, didn't get hit by a plane, collapsed asymmetrically into its own footprint in 7 seconds. Now, the first 2 towers were bad enough, but how can you explain that? I mean, come on, people. Anyway, let's hope Alex Jones has a change of heart and starts telling the truth about the so-called New World Order. Goodbye. And by the way, Alex, if by some miracle you see this video and you decide, you know what, I don't like this little twat who's put out this video about me, I'll leave some details on the video, and if you want to get me on your broadcast, I'll debate you anytime, anywhere about geoengineering and the Society of Jesuits. Okay, the Society of Jesus, aka the Jesuits. There you are, son. Oh yeah, and David Icke. If you think the Vatican is run and controlled by the Rothschilds, then you're a mong. Anyway, goodbye.